collection of Stuart engines and some other nice things. This is part 1, a Stuart Twin Victoria, which was built using a factory machine kit. In this episode, I'm looking at the overall mechanical condition. I bought an entire collection of Stuart engines, a double O-gauge railway, a display cabinet and various other things. It was well worth the drive down to Boston in Lincolnshire, and whilst driving all the way back from Boston, I was really looking forward to getting into this project, and here's the first one, having a look at the Stuart Twin Victoria, as far as I can tell by some of the documentation that was with the engines. This factory machine kit was bought in 2014, and the man who assembled it, who sadly died from COVID-19 a couple of years ago, was a retired physics teacher. You've just been watching me oiling the engine. Every moving part gets some oil. Not just any oil, this is Hallett Oil's compounded steam engine bearing oil. You've just seen me inject some of this oil into the piece of silicone rubber tubing. Now it's time to fit it to the engine. I pushed the silicone rubber tubing onto the union, but then realised it's just going to blow off as soon as I apply some pressure. And for that reason, I fitted a spring clip as you've just seen, which hopefully will hold the pipe in position. You would think, watching this video, that the next logical step would be to turn on the compressed air supply, but no, I need to do something first. The flywheel was originally held to the shaft with two of these, one at each side, and I removed them immediately. These slot screws are absolutely useless. These are always too long, leaving the slot outside the hole. You can't put a lot of pressure on them, they break very easily. My solution is to replace them with grub screws that are designed to use an Allen key. The only time that these slot-headed grub screws work okay is if the slot head is inside the hole, which then offers some support, but universally I now change them for this type, which can be tightened far more than the screw type and hold the flywheel in place on the shaft. To further illustrate this problem, look at the state of the screw that holds the eccentric sheave to the crankshaft. Looking at the eccentric sheave fixing on the other side, you can see that it's been replaced with a slot-headed machine screw. Time for a general look around the engine. I'm not impressed with this, it's very loose. And when I move to the other side, that is also very loose. Because the crosshead is not supported properly, that may explain why the fork on the connecting rod also has some play. Another bad thing, I'm sure there should be a lock nut on the end of the piston rod where it goes into the fitting. If you look carefully at the previous clip, you can see that there is some play on the thread as it goes into the fitting. Overall, the engine feels quite stiff, so I'm going to bite the bullet and connect the air supply. Here we go. Well, it seems to run and it's knocking a bit, and I would like to apologise to certain viewers who write in to tell me that I shouldn't run steam engines at this speed. I'm going to run it for a very short time at a more sedate speed. It's worth remembering that these twin-cylinder mill engines, the full-size ones I mean, actually do go quite fast. On the workbench, I normally would run a miniature steam engine at a high speed, because I'm testing it. This applies to my own engines and also the engines that I repair and recondition for customers. This one at lower speeds has an annoying knock. I'm not going to do anything about this for the moment. By applying some hand pressure to the flywheel and listening to the beats, I can tell that the valve timing is not right. Musically speaking, this valve timing gives a dotted beat sound, like da 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 da. Instead, it should have a straight crotchet or quaver feel, a more regular da 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 clockwork feel. What I'm doing at the moment is moving the position of the eccentric sheave relative to the crank pin. Health and safety warning, do not do what you've just seen me do. Run an engine with my hand on the connecting rod. Please remember, I do this for a living, and I'm very careful not to remove any of my fingers. After a few attempts and a few readjustments, I did get the valve timing very close. Here, by rotating the flywheel with some air pressure in the engine, I can hear the point where the air is being admitted into the cylinder, and ideally this needs to be just before top dead centre at both sides. After setting the valve timing, the engine is still tapping as it turns over slowly. I'm not really doing much at the moment. I'm labouring this a little bit just to show you how it's done. It's a bit like stop motion animation. You move the eccentric sheave a very tiny amount and then run the engine. Then if the knocking is a bit worse, you move it a tiny bit more in the other direction. I also adjusted the valve timing on the other side. Now the timing is about 99.9% correct. I'm going to dismantle this engine to put most of the problems right. But at least the valve timing is improved. Have a listen. When I run the engine in slow motion with my hand on the flywheel to provide some pressure so it makes more noise, you can hear that it sounds much more even. Quite like a steam locomotive. But when you think about it, the mechanism is almost identical. 2 cylinders and 2 crank pins at 90 degrees to each other. And when setting timing, that is how you should start off. The largest lobe of the eccentric sheave should be at 90 degrees to the crank pin. After you've set the first one, set the second one to 90 degrees the other way, otherwise the engine won't go at all. Now with the improved timing, the engine runs much better at a higher speed too. As I mentioned at the beginning, the engine is a little bit on the stiff side, so before I strip it down to work on it and make it right, I'm going to run it in, or break it in as it's known in the USA. It's time for me to stop talking. I'll leave the engine running to the end of the video at various speeds. In this clip, at this particular speed, it's actually telling me what's wrong with it. But apart from the clunk, it tends to stick a little bit. It's not right, so I'm going to take it apart and have a look at it. But not yet. Stay safe, stay healthy, thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful. Please take the time to visit my Mainsteam Models website and click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that, you can find other videos that you may like to watch. And by using the playlists, you can actually watch the videos back to back.